everybody. I'm Benaifa Mirza, and today we have with us Dr. Pallavi Rao Chaturvedi, who is a dynamic parenting coach and the founder of one of India's fastest growing parenting platforms, Get Set Parent with Pallavi. She is the vice president of the Early Childhood Association and the founder of the Brainy Bear Preschool and Activity Club chain. She has been a speaker at numerous prestigious national and international forums, including the United Nations headquarters in New York, the World Forum on Early Childhood Best Practices in Macau, World Education Summit at Dubai, and the G20 Young Entrepreneur Summit in Istanbul. She's also a consulting parenting expert with several reputed organizations in India. Dr. Pallavi has also been featured on the cover of Parent Edge magazine for her successful YouTube series. She regularly conducts webinars and talks for employees and members of several corporate organizations, associations, radio channels, and social media platforms related to various parenting issues. She is an extremely sought after resource person for several academic institutions, schools, and preschools, where she is invited to hold sessions on a variety of issues that include facilitating impactful learning techniques, improving parental bonding with children, stimulation for infants and toddlers, parenting during a pandemic, and so on and so forth. She has also launched a series of early learning toys and aids, which are available on Amazon and the Brainy Bear store as well. In addition to being a parenting coach, Dr. Pallavi is the executive vice president of the EyeSight Group, which is one of India's largest higher education and skill development groups. She is also the founding president of the Bhopal chapter of Entrepreneurs Organization, which is the world's largest association of entrepreneurs, and is a governing body member of the Rabindranath Tagore University, which is India's first skills university. Armed with an engineering degree, an MBA in marketing from the prestigious SP Jain Institute of Management and Research, Mumbai, and a PhD in women entrepreneurship, she's working with children and their parents and continuing her passion. Thank you so much, Dr. Pallavi, for speaking with us at Share a Book India Association and joining the cause and the fundraiser.
Thank you, Benaifa, and thank you, Share a Book India Association. I'm very glad to be here today, and I congratulate the organization and the cause for which you're putting in relentless pursuit. My pleasure.
Thank you so much. So, Dr. Pallavi, tell us some of your earliest, fondest memories with books. How did your association and relationship with books begin?
See, I think, I keep talking about this on my platform also, that as a child growing up in the 80s and 90s, there was not much else to do, right? We didn't have most of the opportunities and distractions that kids of today had. We had one television where everybody from grandparents to parents, no remote control, and, two channels. And, your satellite TV was something you got after 12. At least that was what happened in my house, like many others. So what else was there to do except curl up with a book? So whether, my earliest memories were, of course, the summer holidays, the Saturday afternoons, the Sunday afternoons, taking a big stash of Tinkles and Archies and all kinds of comics, Enid Blyton stories, Hardy Boys, Nancy Drews. I think we grew up on a staple diet of a variety of reading, right? Whether it was comics, whether it was, your chapter books, picture books. And it was pretty much the only pleasurable thing to do as a child growing up then. And we used to look forward to, curling into bed with a big pile of books. And you remember parents coming and saying, you have, 15 minutes and then the lights are going to go off. So, yeah, very different today, of course.
Of course, of course. And Dr. Pallavi, I would say the irony is that while some of them can afford to, there are so many kids that Share a Book India Association works with who do not have this luxury and privilege. So I would request Chetna, who is one of our volunteers and also manages the PR activities and the social media activities at Share a Book, to share a few details about the organization, please.
Sure.
So Chetna, over to you.
So first of all, it's a privilege to meet you, especially for me personally, because I'm a mother of 3 And I've been a long time follower of yours. So this is very exciting. This is
Oh,
like
that's so sweet, Chetna. Thank you so much. You made my day.
so at Share a Book India, like you said, there's not much else to do nowadays at that time when we were growing up. Today, that's not the case, but there's still a underprivileged section of society where, books have a impact which maybe not as much in the higher echelons, in the sense that our children are exposed to travel, they are exposed to American sitcoms, and they are exposed to so many things on the internet, and they learn. And these children live in a very secluded bubble within our society. They're not really, aware of all the things that they do. So books are an important source of information for them, and not just information, but also of dreaming, of imagining.
Yes. Yes.
The sad part is that in most houses, books are seen as an indulgence, non-textbooks, So parents may spring to buy a textbook, but not for a storybook. In fact, I had this happen to me in one of the schools in which I was volunteering when I used to read books and tell the children to use the library. One boy actually came up to me and he showed me a book, which was a kind of a tattered book, and he said, "Ye mera book hai." And everybody was so envious of him because he actually owned a book, and that was a luxury which most children did not have. It was obviously a second-hand book, but he owned it.
Yeah.
That is the feeling that we are trying to foster in children, that books are your ally, they are your friend in a world that may seem friendless at times. And that the sad part is that most of our schools do receive some government grants for libraries. They're just a pile of books usually lying in a room. Nobody accesses them. Nobody, reads them. So we don't just stop at giving books to children. We also go a step further and make them take ownership of the library. We tell them this is your library. You need to run it. You need to take care of it. You need to see that it is worked properly. We teach them how to keep a register. And the idea is that they continue to engage with books after our volunteers have left and finished the program. So this is what we are working towards. And especially during the pandemic, as you know, the gap in learning and reading has widened drastically, and proportionately against the girl child. So we have to work actively at bridging that gap now. And that's what our fundraiser is about. That's what we are trying to do right now, bridge that gap that has formed. The dropout rates have been very, very high. And especially for girls, there has been a great dropout rate during the pandemic where children have got out of school. So this is a matter of great concern, not just, for the children's parents, but for us as a nation. It's a matter of great concern.
That's a fantastic, model that you have at Share a Book India Association. And truly, you gift children the power of reading, and you gift them a lifetime of possible success, because that's the only avenue they have, which can make a difference for not just their generation, but for everybody else. Before them. We see so many families where, the latest generation is well educated and the fortune of the entire family changes. And it's so beautiful to see families move out of, the kind of situation, because there comes a child who changes the fortune for that family. And I think the stories of aspiration and hope come from books. And I'm really, really happy to know what you all are doing. And I would urge every listener here to contribute. I'm sure Chetna and Binaipur will share where to contribute, how to contribute. But I think we all have a role to play when it comes to, the collective upliftment of kids of the next generation, and not just our children, because it's a society at large, and our children are going to be a part of that society. So everybody has a role to play in this.
Very well said, Dr. Pallavi. So yeah, whoever is interested in contributing whatever amount they wish to, because no amount is small, can go to Share a Book India Association's Instagram page. There's a bio, and in the bio, there's a Milap link. So we basically tied up with Milap, and they can contribute how much ever they'd like to. And of course, there's an ATG benefit as well. tax exemption. So it's all taken care of. Now, Dr. Pallavi, tell me, how did Get Set Parent happen? Get Set Parent with Pallavi happen? What inspired you to start it? What are the changes that you've seen, challenges that you've experienced? Tell us everything about it.
So Get Set Parent is it's an absolute outcome of the pandemic, because I was pretty much behind the scenes. I didn't ever think I will do something in front of, on social media. Social media was something you just browse and move over. But what happened was during the pandemic, I felt, so I've been associated with early child development for the last 10 years. And, we run preschools, we run schools. So there was access to parents. I used to speak at forums. So what I wanted to say had a platform. And, all of us used to meet at, in different parts of the country, different parts of the world, discussing these issues, kind of working towards a common objective. But what the pandemic did was lock us into our homes. So I said, you know what, let me just make my account public and start putting out some videos on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. So this was, in Feb of 2021. I didn't even have an Instagram account. It was just one of those which was just lying there. I never posted anything. But in 2021, 2020, that's where, I created, this concept of, here's an opportunity for, a message to reach everyone beyond the brick and mortar structures. And I think that's what technology has also enabled this to happen, and received a lot of love from moms and dads across. And today we're a family of almost 500,000 followers across 3 social media platforms. So what this actually told me was, a young parent, nobody teaches you how to parent. You just land at the deep end and you kind of struggle and, figure out your way through it. But what if there was a way that, you get a little bit of that hand-holding, a little bit of that support from a friend who's been through some of those areas, and, from a learning perspective as well, and, clear the confusion surrounding a lot of these issues. So I'm very blessed to have such a beautiful GSP family, and, we keep thrashing on a lot of issues, a lot of topics, and it's unending, because I think being a parent is the hardest thing in the world, and what happened during COVID, we were not just parents, we were friends, we were teachers, we were entertainers, we were everything rolled into one. So that's how the entire thing began. And I think the challenges are always going to be there. And I think, I also believe that we're going through some of the toughest years in our lives. And if we're able to get through this, I think we can get through anything. I think the kind of resilience, the kind of adaptability that everybody, the parent community, the schools and teacher community, the children, we're all, today there's something, and then we're like, okay, let's do that. Tomorrow there is something else, and we're like, reverting. The rate at which we're switching gears and adapting to new situations is, is phenomenal. And, my special compliments to parents and teachers everywhere for, trying to keep the child at the heart of the issue and make the best out of their time.
That's lovely. That's lovely. So, Dr. Pallavi, speaking of adaptability, obviously, in your career, you must have seen different parenting styles and methods. What do you think was it 10 years ago as compared to what it is right now?
See, I think one thing that has remained common across generations is every parent tries to do what is best for their child according to their understanding at that time. So it's very situational and it is very environment driven, right? So I think that's the core of it. Every parent wants the child to do better than them. Every parent wants the best that they can afford for their children. Any parent across the globe, this stays common. When you talk about, maybe 20 years ago, the way parents brought us up, I think a lot of us, 70s, 80s, early 90s children, the career possibilities, opportunities, availability of resources for travel, for funds, for toys, for everything was far more limited. You know, this was the pre-liberalization economy, you know, of the 80s. Things were very different. So at that time, of course, it was very career focused in terms of, you know, you need to study so that, you know, you crack your engineering entrances, and, you know, engineering or doctor wala generation, rat race wala generation is all of us in a way, because, you know, the parents were very keen that you do the best, and, you know, you kind of become independent when you grow up. But today, I think, you know, with technology, with incomes, double incomes, mothers and fathers both working, lesser time, more money, you know, everything now more easily available to parents. So many more career options, right? Today, there are kids doing fashion and mass communication and illustration and, you know, biotechnology, a lot of these which were unheard of. So I think parents today have also lowered their guard when it comes to, you know, the pressure on academics. They're like, okay, you know, there are many opportunities. At the same time, the challenge has been how to keep children grounded, how to, you know, make sure that the value systems are in place. How do you make sure that money is not at the center of everything? These are really the challenges, because, you know, you have shopping malls, you have brands, you have online shopping, everything, instant gratification. You order on Amazon, you order, you know, your movies on Netflix. So I think today's challenges come from a much deeper place for parents, because you're trying to, you know, bring up a well-rooted, well-grounded child, which is very, very hard to do, given the amount of distractions. And, you know, I think this is where I always tell parents, you know, we will need to dig deep to get that strength out and channel whatever we got, you know, from our parents, and try to keep that in mind. And I think if the basics are right, then, you know, kids are much smarter. You know, generationally, every generation is smarter. They will pick up and adapt. So I think while there are a few core principles, you know, every 10 years, the exposure levels change, and hence parenting styles also need to adapt.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as you speak about exposure levels and the Netflixes and Amazon Primes of the world, how important do you think is it for a parent to actively sit down with their child for a reading activity?
I think the seeds of reading are sowed by the parent, and it can happen only when you do it with your child. So I think, you know, right from, I would say day zero is not too late. The day the child is born, you snuggle with your baby and you start reading books, and you start, you know, that entire journey of bonding with your child, of, you know, delving into the world of characters, of, you know, of situations. And there's so much that can happen when it comes to reading books, even before a child knows a single alphabet or knows how to string words and sentences together. And the early education, 0 to 6, are in fact, you know, where 90% of brain development happens. And typically, if you see, most children start reading in India by the age of 5. So do we say that you start introducing books only at the age of 5? No, you start introducing it at the age of 0. And I think that focused half an hour every night with the child, reading books of the child's choice and whatever new concepts you want to introduce, are absolutely irreplaceable. My fondest, you know, memories, and probably some of the things, I have a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old. Even today, the 9-year-old can read all her books, but she wants me to read to her. She will still call up and say, please read. I said, what is this? So she says, no, we should read. And I think that's our time. That's also where a lot of, you know, it's after the entire day's burden, the child's letting the guards down, you let your guards down. So this channel of communication also opens at that time, you know, something bothering the child, something the child wants to talk about. So reading is a beautiful segue before bedtime, that And this is not even academic. I'm not saying sit and teach your child how to read. It's just read the story, talk about, what this elephant felt this way. How would you feel? Interactive reading styles can be so important. And I think that is the first step. Post that, if you do that, I think children get the hang of it and very subconsciously realize that before bedtime, let me read for 20 minutes. So you know how, whatever is the pressure of the school day, without reading a few pages, then the kid doesn't go to sleep. So I think it's very, very important. And it's unreal if a parent expects that a child will read without, your support or without you being there for the child. And this is the beauty of this, is it need not be just the mother. The father can do this, the grandmother can. In fact, grandparents are the best for storytelling. With or without a book, this is something grandparents love to do anyway. And this is something that everybody in the house can take on, this role of storytelling and reading books to the child.
Absolutely. So Dr. Pallavi, as a parenting mentor yourself, does it sometimes get a little too overwhelming that, oh my God, am I allowed to make my share of mistakes with your kids? Do you ever feel that?
Oh yeah, now my kids watch my videos and say, Mama, you said that in that video, you're not following it. Oh yeah, happens all the time. See, there is always going to be what we need to do and what we are able to do, and what the child is responding to what you are doing. So for me, sometimes I watch my own videos as a reminder, because things like anger management, patience, instant gratification, even though you know the theory of it, you need to keep practicing it and telling yourself, and I have to be extra cautious, because my kids will be like, Mama, we saw you say that. So of course it does happen. But, see, this pressure is not to show anybody anything, right? When we bring up our children, it's not an external pressure. It is about, we get one chance. We get one chance to bring up our children in our unique ways. And, how do you add your little, X factor to that? At the same time, not overwhelming them, because, every child grows with their own personality, and these days that personality is coming out even before they get into primary school. The personality and the sense of individuality and identity is very, very loud in children these days. So the thing is, keeping that at the center, how do you kind of just add a little bit so that they're on the right path? And we need to keep, I also read a lot of books and watch theories, parenting theories as well, because this is a very deep-rooted science. This is not something, of course, I do reels in 30 seconds, but each of these concepts are like PhD thesis topics. There's so much there when it comes to child psychology and, what needs to be done. So we do the best that we can. The most important, I keep telling parents, is just be conscious. If you're conscious that, these 4 things I want to make sure that, I don't mess up with, or these are the 4 things I want to make sure I start doing. The moment you're conscious, you will automatically start being sensitive to that particular issue.
Absolutely.
So that's the important bit. You can't do everything. We're not gods. We can't do everything right.
Absolutely.
And it's not about perfection. It is about, what are those things which stick with you and you feel are important to your sense of values, your family's sense of values that you want to, kind of inculcate in your child.
Absolutely. So, doctor, there would be one set of people who would absolutely kind of, reach out to you and take your guidance. And there would be another set who would say, I don't think parenting can ever be taught.
Yeah.
And, I know my child the best, and, all
Yeah.
these kinds of things. There'll be this a level of resistance.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of, really handle such people wherein, you probably are really itching to tell them that what you're doing is really detrimental for your child? As an expert and having experienced motherhood yourself, having worked with so many parents yourself, but, you feel that, okay, fine, this is someone who is not going to kind of, take it very well.
Yeah.
So then, how does that work?
No, absolutely, Binaifar. I think parenting is something everybody's very protective about. It's a very personal space, and everybody believes that they can do it, the best. And I mean, of course, and so the simple answer is I don't try to convince anybody. I'm not trying to handle anybody, right? So I am not here to, catch people and change their style of parenting. Having said that, while every child has very individual personalities and reactions can be different, there is more commonality than difference. Most, there will be about 70% of a batch of 3 to 5 year olds who have pretty much the same issues. There will be a batch of 7 to 9 year olds, 80% will have pretty much the same issues. If you and I sit and exchange notes, we will come up with pretty much the same things that you and your child are going through as my child and I are going through. So I try to address those issues which are common to people, which, so everybody has screen issue time. Everybody has behavioral issues. Everybody has, stubborn disobedience-based issues. Everybody has parental, self issues, my anger, my patience, my management, my responses to my children. So these are pretty universal, I would say. And what I share are some ideas. It is only the tip of the iceberg. There can be 100 other ways. And I'm always, waiting to hear about other ways. Most questions I see, this is one idea. How do you guys handle it? What are the ideas that you have? So there could be, great ways to deal with that as issues. And the second thing that, I share is, how do I do it? For example, some of the videos that were greatly appreciated was, I was introducing money to my 8-year-old. So, I did a small video on how I gave her a budget and said, so we'll go shopping for her birthday. So she shopped at the toy store and she had to total it and, say, okay, this went over budget. So she had to drop a few toys. She had to make critical decisions because she wanted them all, but she didn't have the money. So I share videos like that, what are the ways in which I have tried to use my creativity to introduce certain topics to children. And no, you cannot convince people if they like something. There are many coaches, there are many ideologies, there are many approaches to parenting globally. So, to each their own.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very well said. Chetna, would you like to ask any questions? Because this is, I'm not a parent, so I think the conversation is going to be more fluid and probably required between the two of you. So Chetna, please feel free.
I welcome the opportunity to her brains. So I want to start with what you had said at the very beginning, that when we were small and we were growing up, there wasn't much to do other than reading.
Yeah.
Obviously, we gravitated towards that, but that's not the case today. Today, I mean, reading is way back on the list, right? There are so many distractions. There's, the TV and laptop and phones and everything. In an environment like that, how do you usher children gently back into books and, kind of without overpowering them, let them discover for themselves the love of books again? Especially slightly older children, probably, whom you can't sit on your lap and read, to
Correct. No, I go through this issue at home as well, because a typical, child 8+, 9+ is so busy because there's school, there's extracurricular activities. Now that, things have opened up, they're, going again across the city, this session, that session, and then there are exams to prepare for, there's academics. And then there's also playtime, the children, so they want to, have unstructured playtime, go outdoors. So where is and then of course a little bit of TV time for relaxation is needed. So where is the time to read? It is definitely something to think about. Two things which, I would suggest is, one, we don't mandate too much the type of reading, because reading for pleasure is very important. The moment we make reading also very academic, it's another chore to tick off in the, at the end of a tiring day. So, if they want to read comics, they read comics. If they want to read some, kids magazines or kids newspaper, any type of reading content is okay, And I think selecting a variety of books and keeping the access to them open is also very important. So one is, encourage reading for pleasure and don't make it a chore. Second is, order nice books or, borrow good books, which you think the child will want to pick up and read. And older children, you can also give them the option, say, look, these are 8-10 books, what would you like to buy? And they may pick 3. So when the decision is there, they will also, look forward to reading their book more often. And I think 20 minutes of reading time before bed, encouraging that as a relaxation technique just before bedtime could be another way. So because there's no time for hours of reading during a normal school day. So I think even 20 minutes is an opening and is a possibility. Of course, holidays, you can read more and encourage more. But yes, there are a lot of things vying for the child's time. There's video games and there's TV and there's friends and there's, classes and everything. But at least, the bare minimum.
Absolutely. Also, we spoke a little bit earlier about, you said that the careers that our parents kind of prepared us for.
Yeah.
There are so many more today. And
Yeah.
in fact, there are so many careers that our parents or even we, when we were growing up, could never have imagined possible.
Yeah.
Instagrammer was never supposed to be a thing, right?
Yeah.
A YouTuber, being a stand-up comic, these are not professions
Correct.
we imagine. And I think it's fair to expect that in the future, there will be more professions that we cannot even dream of today. So
Right.
basically preparing our children for a field that we don't know and which doesn't exist as yet. So unlike our parents, focusing on maths and science to get us through medical, we are shooting in the dark. So, so what do you think are the essential skills we can impart to our children, which will enable them to handle whatever the future brings, whatever maybe the things that come across? What do you think are the essential skills we should empower our children with?
See, these are called 21st century skills. And the point is you're preparing children today for careers in the future, for situations in the future that, won't exist. Today, virologists across the world are trying to find solutions to, problems which they didn't anticipate 3 years ago, right? So where is that knowledge coming from? It is that accumulated academic base on which they're trying to, project the future. So one thing is, even though we don't know what careers go on, will be available in the future, focus on academics can't be neglected. And that is something that, I really wish parents would, we can't bring up children when, in a way that children say, I'm going to be an influencer or an Instagrammer, hence I don't need to do my science and English or Hindi or math or whatever, right? The point is you focus on your academics and inherently what you're good at. So if you're inherently a good dancer, then maybe you take some dance classes. So one is ensuring that, through school and college, the focus on academics by parents is still maintained. You just don't know tomorrow what, how the child, there's so many children who look back and blame their parents saying, you didn't push me. If you had pushed me, I would have done much better in life, right? So it's the fine balance between making sure your child, you push to the level that brings out the potential of your child. So, you want your child to be an achiever. You want your child to be able to think out of the box. So the skills of innovation, of thinking, of problem solving, of analytics, this is one of the compulsory skills. The second one, the second one would be communication, right? Today, from the age of, a kindergartner, whether it is written communication, whether it is, oral communication, the confidence to translate your thoughts, have a point of view, encouraging discussions at home, encouraging debates at home, and not, monologues from parents who say, I told you to do this, so do that. So I think keeping the communication alive is very important, more from a skill point of view, and also the channel of communication with you. Because as they grow, the times are so uncertain that I think during the turbulent teen years, kids need you, and that relationship's not going to, snap on at the age of 15. It needs to be built right from, the young ages. And collaboration is another 21st century skill where, you work in teams, you work with your friends, you create something together. It could be a film you edit together, or a tech project, or a science project. So, irrespective of what the careers hold in future, I think communication, problem solving and critical thinking skills, and collaboration are going to be very critical. And this is not just the onus of the school, but also of the home, to try and be conscious of this, so that, tomorrow, wherever, whatever deep end kids are thrown in, they know how to think and adapt to that situation. We can't teach them today what, may happen in 2070. So we will have to, at best, give them the thinking skills and not the mugging skills. The thinking is very critical.
Also, how do you think we can foster more empathy in children? Because I find nowadays that the class of children, different classes of children are very insulated from each other. The schools also foster that in some way. So there's one world that I go to when I'm volunteering for Sabya, and there's another world of my son's school. And the twain shall meet, it's almost like that. So in such a climate, how do we foster empathy in children? Because these children are so used to getting what they want and being put first always, so how do you foster empathy in such children?
That's a beautiful question, and one that is something that we all really should think about, because really the twain shall never meet, because they're parallel worlds. Everything about, it is very different. I think the RTE Act now has about 25% of children from lower income groups in every classroom. That is what the rule says, the Right to Education Act, and there are children in every classroom. But yes, I mean, the sense of entitlement is something that we all worry about, that, to think that, I'm entitled, and to think that, that the feeling of superiority, all of these are very worrying feelings. And I think somewhere all of us also try to shield our children from the pain. We try to shield our children from looking at other children who don't have as much, or it is mostly, okay, books you don't use, clothes that you don't use, it's hand-me-downs that you pass on to other children. And yeah, this is a very important aspect. And I think, organizations like yours can make a difference, when you say, share a book, maybe kids read together, of course, COVID notwithstanding. Post that, maybe you have children reading together and maybe exchanging books, and, having a buddy that, a child can reach out to every time he or she needs a friend. I think those kind of connections would be interesting. And I think at a personal level at home, what we can all do is, if maids have children at home, allow for play maybe. You need a leveler. We need to have playtime as a leveler, where it is, even then we worry, right? What language are the kids going to get home? What is everything, we kind of do think about all these things. But it's important to get the interaction going and the sensitivity that, look, not everybody has. When you discard, I'm bored with this toy in half an hour, which costs, 2,000 rupees, and the child is like, oh, I'm done playing with this, I need a new toy. How do we get the child to say that this was, this is, somebody is 1 week's income at home, right? So I think we will need to try and find ways for children to interact. And there are organizations, of course, a lot of activities I think schools also used to do pre-COVID, taking children to orphanages and all of that. But somehow, I'm not a fan of on birthdays, you go there and distribute to, it seems again a sense of entitlement that, I am distributing to 100 children on my birthday. So it needs to be very, it has to be through play, reading. It has to, it's not as much a material exchange as it is spending time with them,
right?
Which I think would bring the empathy.
Right. Also, on your Instagram, I've seen a lot of times you talk about, safeguarding children on the internet, about
Yeah,
sharing safely, and
yeah,
COVID especially has really thrown us in the middle of it. And I know every parent worries about that, because in my house, especially, we have multiple kids doing online class at the same time. And on the side, they're chatting with their friends on Discord or whatever. And the internet can be a scary place. It can be a dark space. It can also be a very informative place. But
yes,
how do we empower kids? And yes, we can put parental controls and all that, but there's a limit to how much these things will succeed.
yes.
So how do we actually make sure that we converse with our children, make them aware of the perils of the internet, and to safeguard them from that?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right, because kids today can find their way around every parental control, can hack their way. There's that one child in class who knows everything and how to do everything. So they will always find their ways. But what's important is keeping the control with the child. And that will come through conversation and counseling with children. That's going to be very important, because a child is also concerned about the safety of his or her parents, about themselves. They don't want to get into trouble. So it's there is temptation, talking to strangers, and these chat rooms and conversations which have been there even while we were growing up. But today it's much earlier, right? These kids are doing it in school. So I think we talk to our kids about what is the level of information you give out. You don't share your school, you don't share your home address. All of this counseling is very, very important. And telling the child that your sense of identity, protecting it, is not just for you, but also your brothers and sisters, also your mom, also your dad. A lot of times, kids don't think about themselves so much, but then when you tell them it's the family, they're very sensitive and they love their family. So they do take response. They like, kids are very responsible when you tell them that, look, you have to safeguard the family and, be careful about it. So I think these conversations are very, very important when it comes to disclosure of private information. And what are the kind of content you post? So one is what you view, and, of course, parental controls do help in terms of what the child can view, but what is the content you upload? Don't put pictures like this, or it's okay to put pictures like this. I think these conversations are very, very important today, because I think every 10-12-year-old is equipped to teach the parent what to do online. They know more than us on what's happening online. But given that this is where the world is heading, the onus has to be with the child, and the education has to happen with the child. And because you can't, there's only that much that you can do through the system. You will have to do it through the child. And the sense of the conscience has to speak to the child when it comes to being careful and, deciding what to share, what not to share, and how much trouble. And also, I think a little bit of, talking about cases, what happened, case studies, this child very inadvertently, sometimes it's not intentional, right? This happened and this was the trouble they landed in. So give them a little bit of case studies and context that, look, these kind of situations can land you in that. So, that's why fear is important when it comes to this. A little bit of fear is not a bad thing.
Yeah. I could go on and on, but I can see that so itching to speak.
It's so lovely, because honestly, so many of these are just not like parenting lessons, but life lessons. Like I really feel that even about the digital space, there's just so much that we can put out of our inst, like when people are traveling and probably they have aged parents at home and they're constantly still uploading stories. It's a very dangerous world to live in. I may sound cynical, but I just feel that you need to be really, really very mindful about what you're sharing on the internet, because I don't know, I mean, this people who are hackers.
You never know who's watching
real, like,
in fact, I did a reel where I said
exactly.
two most important things. Three things. One, never post pictures of kids in school uniforms, because immediately, you get to know which school and hence track. Second, never post anything which gives away where your apartment is or where your home is or which area. And third, never post from a live location. You could be at a restaurant and you're eating something and you're dying to share it with the world. Hold it. Go home and post after 1 hour. Never post from location. Post after you have left the location. That's very important. So if you're on a holiday, I mean, at least my holiday posts are, you know, when I'm back home safely, and then I'm like, you know, posting. But what do you do? Because there are many people, you know, they're kids, you're traveling, you don't want to land in soup. You have to be careful.
I know, you know, so I think that is one of the banes of, I would say, social media and technology that, you know, it's first of all, it's a race, and, you know, in the world of influencers, where obviously, like, you know, people like yourself are making such a great impact. But then, I mean, there's such a fine line between everything. But no, Chetna, I absolutely enjoyed this conversation, like not being a parent myself, but I think, you know, there's so much, you know, because I think even if you're not a parent yourself, you are definitely going to be an aunt or an uncle to someone. You know, you'll have kids in your neighborhood, and you never know when one action of yours is going to positively or negatively influence a child. So
I think everywhere it's about modeling the behavior, and you know, whether we like it or not, we are all apparently role models, right? To every child, not our own children, to, you know, to somebody you could be the aspiration. To somebody, you are the person they want to be. To somebody, you are the goal. So I think we all carry that little bit of pressure and mantle on our shoulders, that, you know, there are children watching us. There are, you know, children everywhere who, you know, either want to be like you or don't want to be like you. So that's up to us how we, you know, kind of do that. And I'm incredibly honored to have been here, Binayfer and Chetna, to speak to you today, and to all our beautiful audience as well. And yes, we don't know what times hold in future, but yes, be safe and take care of yourselves, your families.
Thank you so much. And if you could just like send out a quick message, maybe, you know, even to kids who would probably want to contribute their 100 rupees or 100 rupees from their pocket money or something towards a fundraiser. So if you could just kind of reach out, please.
Absolutely. You know, so I'm reaching out to every parent, every viewer over here, that here's an organization, Share a Book India Association, which is doing very fundamental work with, you know, respect to promoting the love of learning and presenting the joy of reading and books to a whole generation of children who don't have access to it. And it's a very small thing that we can do, which is contribute as much money as you can, however small, 100 rupees and whatever is possible, to Share a Book India Association. You can log on to their Instagram page, and through Milap, you can, you know, make your contribution, and there's of course an ATG tax exemption as well. So I would urge everyone to do that. I'm going to do that as soon as I get off this conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Pallavi. It's been such an amazing conversation, being a non-parent myself, but it's been absolutely lovely and an honor to speak. I could probably kind of go and give a few tidbits and look smart in front of my friends who are mothers and fathers.
No, I enjoyed myself too, and Binayfer, Chetna, and you know, your entire organization. This is incredible work, because, you know, to work at the grassroots level and still try to make an impact is tremendous, and we need more of you. So whenever you need a shout out, just let me know. My support is with you guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
And Chetna, you want to quickly do that thing? I think she
in the chat. Can you see it?
Yeah, I'm in conversation with. So what do you want me to do?
You know, actually what you just said at the very end right now, kind of was more or less perfect, you know, that I'm in conversation with Share a Book India.
No, but you want this as a video on the phone, or you want it here, or how?
You can do it here.
We can do it here?
Yeah.
Okay. So as a quick, okay, got it.
Teaser.
Yeah, non-profit that sets up community and school libraries. All right. Hi, I'm Dr. Pallavi Rao Chaturvedi from Get Set Parent with Pallavi. And I want to congratulate Share a Book India Association and tell they're a non-profit organization working to set up libraries for underprivileged children to get access to books and enjoy the love of reading. And I'd urge all of you to make your contribution, however small, and make a difference to their lives. Thank you.